A diver's hand breaks the surface, clutching a golden bracelet that has not seen light for over 1,000 years. This treasure did not come from a shipwreck, but from the streets of a drowned metropolis. For centuries, the city of Heracleion was nothing more than a whisper in ancient texts, a legendary Egyptian port of unimaginable wealth that simply vanished into the Mediterranean Sea. Also called Thonis, this was the mandatory gateway to Egypt, where every Greek trader had to pay their dues before entering the Nile. Then, around the 2nd century before the Common Era, it was swallowed by the waves and erased from memory. By the end of this story, you will understand exactly how a city of stone and gold can disappear, and what its rediscovery means for our understanding of the ancient world. We will uncover why its colossal statues now stand in museums, how a single slab of black granite solved a historical mystery debated for millennia, and what terrifying natural force could make the very earth turn to liquid. What does the fate of a city lost for 1,200 years tell us about our own world today? That golden bracelet was a question waiting to be asked. For over 2,000 years, the city it came from existed only in fragments of text, a ghost in the historical record. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century before the Common Era, spoke of a magnificent temple built in the Nile Delta to honor the hero god Heracles. He described a place of immense religious and commercial importance, where a colossal statue of the deity watched over a bustling harbor. Even the epic legend of Helen of Troy brushed against its shores, with some versions of the story claiming she and Paris stopped there during their fateful journey, a fleeting visit that wove the city into the fabric of myth. Yet the most persistent clue was also the most confusing. Ancient records referred to a city called Thonis, an Egyptian name, and a city called Heracleion, a Greek name. Were these two different ports rivals perhaps sitting close to each other on the same coastline? Or were they one and the same place, known by two names to two different cultures? This was not just academic trivia, it was the central puzzle. If scholars could not agree on what they were looking for, how could anyone hope to find it? For generations, searches were launched along the ever-shifting marshes of the Nile Delta. Expeditions scoured the wrong bays, dug in the wrong silt, and found nothing but mud and disappointment. With each failed attempt, the legendary port slipped further from history and deeper into fantasy. It was dismissed as an exaggeration, a conflation of stories, a beautiful myth. The city of Heracleion, the gateway to Egypt, was officially considered lost, not to the sea, but to the realm of make-believe. Yet the stories were too specific, too consistent to be entirely invented. They were a siren's call, luring believers to look where everyone else said nothing could be found. The mystery of its name was the very thread that would one day lead to its discovery. The answer to that ancient riddle would not come from a dusty library, but from the murky waters of the Mediterranean. In the late 1990s, a French underwater archaeologist named Franck Goddio decided to trust the old stories. He assembled a team of experts, from historians to geophysicists, and turned his attention to the Abu Qir Bay, a wide, shallow gulf just east of Alexandria. This was not a dive-and-hope mission. It was a meticulously planned technological hunt. The team deployed side-scan sonar, which painted a detailed acoustic picture of the seabed, and used incredibly sensitive nuclear magnetic resonance magnetometers to detect the faint magnetic signatures of buried stone and metal. Every inch of the search grid was mapped with precise GPS positioning. For weeks, they methodically scanned the bay, their screens displaying only the gentle, featureless slopes of accumulated silt. Then the data began to tell a different story. The sonar returns started to show anomalies, sharp angles, and long, straight lines that nature simply does not create. Deep beneath several meters of sediment, the outlines of structures began to emerge, ghostly blueprints of a sunken world. The shapes of walls, the potential foundations of temples, the suggestions of a harbor basin. The legend was taking physical form in their data. The tension was palpable. They had the map, but they needed proof. On a dive in the year 2000, a team member descended into the green gloom, following the coordinates to one of the strongest anomalies. Visibility was near zero in the stirred-up silt. Then his hand, moving through the cloudy water, brushed against something solid, not rock but worked stone. He cleared away the mud, and a face began to appear, a stern, regal face larger than his own torso. It was the head of a colossal statue, a pharaoh carved from red granite, lying on its side where it had fallen millennia ago. In that silent, weightless moment, with his hand on the cold stone cheek of a forgotten king, 2,000 years of myth evaporated. Heracleion was real. The pharaoh's stone gaze was just the beginning. The initial dive site was merely one point on a map that would expand into something staggering. The lost city was not a small settlement, but a sprawling metropolis lying 6.5 kilometers off the modern Egyptian coast, completely submerged beneath 10 meters of Mediterranean water. Over years of meticulous exploration, Frank Gordio's team mapped a vast area of the seabed, an expanse covering over 110 square kilometers. This underwater world contained not just Heracleion, but also significant portions of its sister city, Canopus, another legendary port mentioned in ancient texts. The scale was almost incomprehensible. This was not a single sunken building, but an entire urban landscape, a ghost city preserved in a watery tomb. The layout they painstakingly revealed was that of a major religious and commercial hub. At its heart stood the grand temple of Amun-Jereb, the supreme Egyptian god, a sacred precinct where pharaohs came to receive their divine power. Radiating out from this spiritual center was a complex network of canals, functioning like ancient highways, connecting a sprawling harbor system to residential districts and smaller temples. The team found the remains of over 60 ancient ships, some still tied to the stone piers, as if waiting for a cargo that would never come. They mapped colossal statues, toppled columns, and intricate gold artifacts scattered across the seafloor like the belongings of a giant hastily abandoned. Imagine swimming through this silent, blue-green world, where sunlight filters down to illuminate a stone doorway leading nowhere, or a slab inscribed with hieroglyphs now read only by fish. The entire city is frozen in a single, catastrophic moment, a snapshot of daily life interrupted forever. Every anchor, every piece of pottery, every amulet is a word in a story the silt has been keeping for over 2 millennia. This was not a ruin slowly crumbling over centuries. This was a place captured whole by the sea. Among those silent, toppled giants guarding the sunken canals, one structure stood as the undeniable heart of the city. The Grand Temple of Amun-Jereb was not just a place of worship, it was the very source of political power for the entire region. Imagine approaching this sacred island by boat, as every trader and diplomat once did. Your first sight would have been a trio of colossal statues, each standing over 5 meters tall, carved from a single, flawless block of red granite. They flanked the temple entrance like eternal sentinels. On one side, a powerful pharaoh, his face serene and commanding. On the other, a queen, her expression equally regal. And between them, a figure of immense symbolic weight, the god Hapi, the deity of the annual Nile flood. This was a statement carved in stone. The pharaoh and queen represented earthly authority, but Hapi represented the lifeblood of Egypt itself, the predictable flood that brought fertile silt and prosperity. Placing him here at the gateway declared that all wealth flowing into Egypt was a divine gift, managed by the pharaohs who derived their right to rule from Amun-Jereb. This temple was where that divine right was renewed each year in a lavish ceremony. The ruling pharaoh would journey here to receive the god's blessing, a ritual that cemented his authority in the eyes of both his people and the foreign merchants crowding the harbor. This spiritual significance directly translated to staggering earthly power. Every ship, every cargo, every trader entering Egypt from the Mediterranean was forced to dock at Heracleion first. Here, in the shadow of this temple, officials would inventory all goods, collect hefty taxes and customs duties, and offer a portion to the priests of Amun-Jereb. The discovery of countless lead weights and seals within the temple complex confirmed it. This was the primary administrative choke point for all of Egypt's international wealth. The gold, the silver, the incense, and the grain all passed under the stone gaze of Hapi, ensuring the gods and the pharaoh received their share before anything proceeded up the Nile. The temple was not just a religious site, it was a bank, a customs house, and a political tool of unimaginable scale. The power of the temple of Amun-Jereb flowed not just through its stone halls, but through the very water surrounding it. Running directly from the steps of the main sanctuary was a wide, ceremonial waterway archaeologists named the Divine Canal. This was not a route for trade ships, but a sacred path for the gods. It connected the Grand Temple to a smaller, secondary sanctuary dedicated to Osiris, the god of the afterlife and rebirth. This canal formed the spiritual artery of Heracleion, a liquid highway for religious processions. Imagine the spectacle on a major festival day. A gilded ceremonial barge carrying a statue of the god would be paraded from one temple to the other along this channel, surrounded by chanting priests and the awestruck populace lining the banks. The water itself was considered a divine medium, a direct conduit to the gods, and the people of Heracleion spoke to their gods through gifts thrown into that dark, flowing water. Along the edges of the Divine Canal and scattered across the harbor basin near the temple, divers made one of the most emotionally resonant discoveries. They found not trash but treasure deliberately placed, hundreds upon hundreds of ritual deposits, perfectly preserved by the silt and the stable, saltwater environment. Their hands brought up exquisite bronze statuettes of gods and goddesses, their features still sharp. They recovered delicate gold jewelry, rings and pendants that once adorned wealthy worshippers. They found beautiful, translucent alabaster vessels called unguentaria, which would have held precious perfumes or oils. Each one of these objects was a prayer made solid. This practice is known to archaeologists as watery deposition. For the ancient Egyptians, offering something of value to the sacred waters was a direct transaction with the divine. It was a way to give thanks, to ask for favor, or to ensure safe passage in the afterlife. The sheer volume and quality of these finds in Heracleion is staggering. It provides an unparalleled, almost intimate snapshot of personal piety during the Ptolemaic period, the era when Greek rulers governed Egypt following Alexander the Great. These were not grand state-sponsored monuments, but the private devotions of merchants, sailors, priests, and citizens. A gold ring tossed into the canal by a trader thankful for a safe voyage. A bronze figure of Osiris offered by a family hoping for a blessed afterlife. A vial of expensive perfume given by someone seeking healing. Each artifact is a frozen moment of hope, fear, gratitude, and faith, lying untouched on the seafloor for over 2,000 years. This underwater trove tells us that Heracleion was not just a center of commerce and political power, but a city where daily life was deeply intertwined with the divine, where the boundary between the earthly port and the realm of the gods was as fluid as the water in the sacred canal. But these intimate offerings were dwarfed by the silent guardians of the deep. Lifting their gaze from the scattered gold and bronze, divers encountered giants. The most startling of these was a statue of the god Hapi, standing 5.4 meters tall, a single block of red granite carved with immense skill. Hapi was the personification of the Nile flood, a symbol of abundance and fertility, and here he was, presiding over a city now buried by water, a profound and almost ironic sentinel. Nearby lay the colossal figures of a Ptolemaic king and queen, equally massive, their royal headdresses and serene expressions visible even under a blanket of marine growth. These were not merely decorations, they were statements of power and permanence, meant to awe every visitor who sailed into the harbor. The sheer number of such statues found, over 60 major pieces, speaks to a city of staggering wealth, where commissioning art on a monumental scale was simply what you did to proclaim your devotion and your authority. Each statue also tells a fascinating story of cultural fusion. The Ptolemaic rulers were Greek, descendants of Alexander the Great's general, but to rule Egypt they had to become pharaohs in the eyes of the people. So these statues blend artistic traditions, the idealized, muscular forms of Hellenistic Greek sculpture with the rigid, symbolic poses and regalia of traditional Egyptian pharaonic art. The king wears a Greek-style cloak, but also the royal Nemes headdress. The queen's features are softly modeled in the Greek manner, but her posture is eternally Egyptian. They are physical manifestations of a political compromise, stone propaganda meant to unite two worlds under one rule. Recovering these giants from their watery grave was a feat of modern engineering as ambitious as the original carving. You cannot simply attach cables and heave a 16-ton block of waterlogged granite to the surface. The process begins with meticulous underwater archaeology, carefully clearing centuries of sediment to expose the entire statue. Then, divers slide specially designed lifting frames underneath it, a delicate operation performed in near-zero visibility. The statue is then gently cradled and raised inch by inch to avoid any shock that could crack the ancient stone. But the real work begins on land. A statue that has sat in salt water for 2 millennia is like a sponge, its pores completely saturated with corrosive salts. If it were allowed to dry naturally, those salts would crystallize inside the stone, expanding and causing it to crumble into dust. So begins a conservation process that can take years, even decades. The statues are submerged in massive freshwater tanks, and the water is changed regularly, sometimes for over a year, to slowly leach out the salts. This desalination is monitored with scientific precision. Only when the water tests show no more salt is escaping the stone can the gradual, controlled drying process begin. It is a race against time and chemistry, a patient dialogue between modern science and ancient craft to preserve these figures for centuries to come. What do these resurrected giants ultimately tell us? Their scale is a direct measure of Heracleion's economic might. Only a port handling a vast portion of the Mediterranean's wealth could afford the quarries, the sculptors, and the monumental logistics required to create and install such art. Their hybrid style confirms Heracleion's unique role as the fusion point of two great civilizations, the mandatory doorway where Greek met Egyptian, and their subject matter, the divine Hapi alongside the ruling Ptolemaic family, reinforces the city's sacred and political function. These statues were the billboards of the ancient world, broadcasting a message of divinely sanctioned prosperity and stable, blended rule to every trader, diplomat, and pilgrim. They stood as unshakable proof that in Heracleion, the gods and the pharaohs, the Nile and the Mediterranean were in perfect, prosperous alignment, until the very earth beneath them betrayed that promise. Yet for all the grandeur of its statues, the most earth-shattering discovery in Heracleion was not a towering figure, but a slab of text. Resting on the floor of what was once the grand temple of Amun-Jereb, divers found a massive stele of black granite standing over 2 meters tall and perfectly preserved by the sea. Carved into its surface were columns of crisp hieroglyphs, a formal decree from a pharaoh, waiting in the dark for over 2,300 years to deliver its message. This was the decree of size issued by Pharaoh Nectanebo I around 370 BCE. Its words were a bureaucratic order, but to archaeologists they were a thunderclap. The text commanded that a tax of 10% on all Greek goods and metals imported through, and here is the crucial phrase, the city of Thonis, must be dedicated to the temple of the goddess Neith in the city of Size. And then, in the same line, it gives the Greek name for this very same port, Heracleion. In one stroke, this single stone slab solved the historical mystery that had baffled scholars for generations. Thonis and Heracleion were not two different cities. They were one and the same place, known by its Egyptian name to the locals and by its Greek name to the merchants and historians across the sea. The steel was the smoking gun, the irrefutable proof that the legendary gateway was real and that it was here, lying beneath their diving masks. But its importance goes far beyond just solving a name puzzle. Think about what this decree represents. It is not a myth or a traveler's tale. It is hard fiscal policy carved in stone for eternity. It confirms, in the pharaoh's own words, that Heracleion was the mandatory choke point for all Greek trade entering Egypt. Every ship, every cargo had to stop here, be assessed, and pay its due. That 10% tax was not a suggestion. It was the law of the land, and the fact that this law was displayed so prominently in the city's main temple tells us everything. This was where the authority of the state and the wealth of the world converged. The steel transforms Heracleion from a mythical place into a functioning administrative capital, a customs house of empire where the economic lifeblood of a civilization was monitored, measured, and taxed. It gives concrete, undeniable purpose to every warehouse, every dock, and every scale weight found on the site. This black granite slab is the city's birth certificate and its business license, all in one, finally bringing the legend into the clear, documented light of history. The Black Granite Decree tells us of laws and taxes, but the true heartbeat of Heracleion is found in smaller, more personal treasures. While the colossal statues speak of gods and pharaohs, the silt of the city has preserved the intimate echoes of its ordinary citizens. Divers have recovered objects that feel startlingly familiar, items that could have been dropped just yesterday. A simple wooden comb, its teeth still perfectly spaced, lies where it fell from someone's hand. A bronze cooking pot, its base blackened from a kitchen fire, rests beside a hearth. Delicate bronze fishing hooks, some still attached to their lines, speak of meals caught in the very waters that would one day swallow the city. These are not the artifacts of legend, but of life. They tell us that Heracleion was not just a ceremonial center or a customs house. It was a living, breathing community of families, cooks, fishermen, and merchants, all going about their daily routines in the shadow of the Grand Temple. Nowhere was this daily bustle more evident than in the harbor. In one concentrated area of the seabed, archaeologists made a staggering find, a veritable forest of stone anchors. Over 70 of them were discovered, each one a heavy, carved block of limestone with a hole for a rope. They were not stored neatly, but scattered and dropped as if in a hurry. This dense cluster paints a vivid picture of the port at its peak. Imagine the chaotic, vibrant scene. Ships from across the Mediterranean would jostle for space along the stone quays. Crews, shouting in a dozen different languages, would heave these anchors over the side to secure their vessels. The clatter of stone on wood, the smell of salt and tar and exotic spices, the cries of dockworkers unloading amphorae of wine and olive oil. This was the symphony of Heracleion. Each anchor represents a vessel, a journey, a story of trade and connection. Finding so many in one place is like finding a traffic jam frozen in time, undeniable proof of a harbor operating at absolute capacity. The true cosmopolitan nature of this traffic is confirmed by the smallest and most telling of finds, coins. The mud of Heracleion has yielded a numismatic map of the ancient world. There are Egyptian pieces bearing the faces of Ptolemaic kings and queens. There are Athenian silver tetradrachms with their iconic owl symbol worn smooth from countless hands. Coins from Phoenician cities like Tyre, from the island of Rhodes, and from empires further east have all been recovered. This loose change, lost between dock planks or slipped from a purse, tells a powerful story. It means a Greek merchant could pay a Phoenician sailor with an Egyptian coin, and everyone would accept its value. Heracleion was a true melting pot, a place where cultures and currencies mixed as freely as the waters of the Nile and the Mediterranean. Egyptians, Greeks, Phoenicians, and others didn't just trade goods here, they lived alongside one another. They shared meals in tavernas, haggled in markets, and worshipped in temples that blended their traditions. The city was a dialogue in stone, wood, and metal, a thriving experiment in multicultural life 2,000 years before the concept had a name. This vibrant, everyday world of commerce and community made the city's ultimate fate not just a historical tragedy, but a profoundly human one. But this vibrant, multicultural hub did not exist in a vacuum. Further up the same branch of the Nile, another city thrived, a place known to history as Naucratis. For centuries, Naucratis held a special place in the story of ancient Egypt. Founded in the 6th century before the Common Era, it was a unique concession by the Egyptian pharaohs, a designated trading colony exclusively for Greek merchants. Think of it as a special economic zone, a place where Greeks could live, worship their own gods in temples like the famous Heracleion, and conduct business directly with the Egyptian interior. For a long time, historians believed Naucratis was the primary, perhaps even the only, official Greek port in Egypt. It was the star of the story, the bustling center of cross-cultural exchange mentioned by Herodotus himself. The discovery of Heracleion has completely rewritten that script. We now understand the relationship between these two cities not as a rivalry, but as a strict state-controlled sequence. Heracleion was not the competitor to Naucratis, it was the gatekeeper. The decree of size, that black granite slab from the temple floor, makes the hierarchy perfectly clear. Its command that a 10% tax on Greek goods be levied at Thonis, that is Heracleion, was a royal order. This means every single Greek ship sailing for Egypt, whether its ultimate destination was Naucratis or anywhere else, was legally obligated to stop first at Heracleion. They could not sail past it, they could not go around it. The city at the mouth of the Nile held the keys to the kingdom. Here, in the shadow of the temple of Amun-Jereb, officials would board each vessel. They would meticulously inventory every amphora of wine, every ingot of silver, every bolt of fine cloth. They would calculate the required tax, and only then, with the proper seals and documentation, would that ship be permitted to travel upriver. Naucratis was the destination, but Heracleion was the mandatory checkpoint. This redefines our entire understanding of economic power in the region. It means that while Naucratis was a flourishing community of Greeks, the real control, the true point where wealth was extracted and recorded for the pharaoh, was here at the watery threshold. Heracleion was the ultimate choke point, the valve through which all Mediterranean wealth flowed into Egypt. Its colossal statues and rich temples were not just for show, they were monuments funded by a tax on an entire sea's worth of commerce, a testament to its absolute, non-negotiable authority over every ship and every dream of profit that sailed toward the Nile. That everyday life of commerce and community was adorned with astonishing beauty. Among the cooking pots and fishing hooks, the divers' lights also caught a different, more brilliant glint, the flash of gold resting undisturbed on the ancient seabed. While the colossal statues spoke for the state and the gods, these smaller treasures whispered the private stories of Heracleion's people. The silt, which sealed the city's fate, became its greatest protector, preserving a collection of personal jewelry so pristine it feels as if it was dropped only yesterday. Imagine a diver's hand moving gently through the cloudy water, parting the mud to reveal not a broken shard, but a pair of exquisite gold earrings, their intricate filigree work perfectly intact. Or a heavy signet ring, its bezel carved with a family symbol, lying beside what was once a wooden jewelry box long since dissolved. One of the most breathtaking finds is a delicate gold bracelet, crafted not as a solid band, but as an open-work masterpiece. It depicts the winged goddess Isis in stunning detail, her protective form kneeling with wings outstretched, a symbol of maternal safety and magic. The craftsmanship is a silent testament to the city's unique position. The subject is purely Egyptian, the powerful goddess Isis, but the technique of fine gold wirework and the artistic sensibility show a strong Hellenistic influence. This bracelet is not just an ornament, it is a cultural conversation worn on the wrist, a blend of Egyptian divinity and Greek artistry that only a place like Heracleion could produce. These pieces almost certainly belonged to the city's wealthy elite, the merchant princes, the high priests, the governing officials who profited from the river of trade flowing through the port. Their survival is a historical miracle. In any city abandoned on land, such obvious wealth would have been the first thing looted, melted down, and lost forever. But here, the catastrophe that sank Heracleion also preserved its most intimate valuables. As buildings collapsed and the city subsided, these precious items were swiftly buried under meters of protective sediment, hidden from plunderers for over 2,000 years. This gives us something incredibly rare in archaeology, a direct, untouched connection. We are not looking at a piece that was pawned, inherited, or lost centuries later. We are seeing the very jewelry that a citizen of Heracleion chose to wear on a day in the 2nd century before the Common Era, recovered from the spot where it last rested against their skin. That golden bracelet with Isis was not in a museum case, it was on the floor of a home or a temple, a personal object of faith and status that someone valued. It makes the past suddenly, vividly human, transforming names from stone inscriptions into people who loved beauty, displayed their piety, and adorned themselves with the blended art of their world. The gold and the statues tell one story, but the harbor floor holds another, more somber tale. Scattered across the submerged basin of Heracleion are not just anchors, but the ships that once dropped them. Over 70 ancient vessels have been identified, their wooden hulls preserved in the oxygen-starved mud. This is the largest concentration of ancient ships ever discovered in one place, a ghost fleet that offers a breathtakingly direct look at the maritime world that made the city thrive. Among these wrecks, two distinct types emerge, representing the two great cultures that met here. The first are sturdy, flat-bottomed Egyptian cargo ships, built for navigating the shallow, shifting channels of the Nile Delta. Their construction method is fascinating. These were shell-first vessels, meaning the outer planks of the hull were fitted together edge to edge with intricate joints, almost like a puzzle, before the internal wooden skeleton was added. This created a strong, flexible hull perfectly suited to river travel. The second type are sleeker, deeper-keeled Greek trading vessels, designed for the open, choppy waters of the Mediterranean. Finding them resting side by side in the same harbor mud is a powerful image. It is the physical proof of the city's role as a transfer point, where goods were moved from the deep-sea Greek ships to the shallower draft Egyptian barges for the journey up the Nile. But these ships are more than just hulls, they are sealed time capsules. Inside their broken frames, archaeologists found the cargoes they carried on their final voyage. Rows of ceramic amphorae, the standardized shipping containers of the ancient world, lie stacked as they were over 2,000 years ago. By studying the shape, clay composition, and stamps on these jars, experts can trace a map of Mediterranean trade right to the harbor floor. Some amphorae came from the Greek island of Chios, famous for its fine wine. Others originated in Palestine, likely holding precious olive oil or garum, a pungent, fermented fish sauce that was the ketchup of the Roman world. Each cluster of jars tells a story of supply and demand, of agricultural regions producing surplus for export, and of a cosmopolitan city with a taste for imported luxuries. The sheer volume of this material is staggering, confirming that Heracleion was not just a customs post, but a bustling transshipment hub where goods from across the known world were constantly being loaded, unloaded, and repacked. The condition of these wrecks also freezes a moment in time with eerie clarity. Many of the ships were found tied to their stone moorings or clustered together as if in a sudden panic. Some show no signs of storm damage, no broken masts or torn sails from a violent squall. Instead, they appear simply to have filled with water and settled straight down into the soft sediment almost gently. This detail is a crucial clue to the city's fate. It suggests the disaster was not a sudden, tsunami-like wave that smashed the port, but a slower, more insidious process. The ships sank at their docks as if the water level rose around them, or more terrifyingly, as if the very ground beneath the harbor gave way. These silent ships, with their cargo still on board, are the ultimate witnesses. They capture the precise moment when the vibrant symphony of the port, the shouts, the creaking ropes, the clatter of cargo stopped, and the silt began to whisper its long, dark secret. The silent ships resting at their moorings point to a disaster that was both profound and patient. To understand how a city of stone simply vanishes into the sea, we must look not just at the water above, but at the ground below. The Nile Delta, where Heracleion was built, is a landscape of incredible fertility and profound instability. It is not solid rock. It is a vast, shifting cake of sediment, layer upon layer of silt, sand, and clay deposited over millennia by the great river. This ground is soft, compressible, and waterlogged, building a metropolis of colossal granite temples and dense urban quarters on such a foundation is, in hindsight, an act of breathtaking ambition. The city's very weight may have been its undoing. The leading theory for its disappearance centers on a terrifying natural phenomenon known as soil liquefaction. In simple terms, think of wet sand at the beach. When you stand still on it, the sand supports your weight. But if you start to wiggle your feet or jump up and down, the sand suddenly loses its strength and turns into a soupy quicksand. The solid grains are forced apart by the water pressure between them, and the entire mass behaves like a liquid, now scaled that up to a catastrophic degree. The ground beneath Heracleion was saturated with water from the Nile and the sea. When a powerful earthquake struck, the seismic shaking would have sent shockwaves through that waterlogged soil. The intense pressure would have forced the water upward, separating the sediment particles. In an instant, the solid earth that had supported the city's foundations for centuries would have lost all its bearing capacity. It would have turned from a firm base into a churning, unstable slurry. The heavy stone buildings, the colossal statues, the very streets themselves would have had nothing solid to stand on. They would have begun to tilt, crack, and sink into the suddenly fluid earth. The harbor basin would have dropped, allowing the sea to rush in not as a single giant wave, but as a relentless, rising flood, filling the spaces where the land had been just moments before. This process, subsidence, would not have been over in minutes. It could have occurred in stages over years or even decades, with each new tremor or seasonal flood further weakening the ground. The citizens would have watched in horror as cracks appeared in temple walls, as canals overflowed their banks for no apparent reason, as the sea crept steadily farther inland with each passing season. Their magnificent port, the gateway to Egypt, was being consumed by the very earth it was built upon. The geological evidence from the site supports this grim scenario. Core samples taken from the seabed show clear signs of sudden, violent disruption in the sediment layers, consistent with a major seismic event. The pattern of the sunken ruins themselves, with structures tilted at wild angles and massive blocks displaced as if by a giant, unseen hand, points to a ground failure rather than a simple rise in sea level. Heracleion did not drown from above. It was swallowed from below, a victim of the unstable, beautiful, and treacherous delta that gave it life. Soil liquefaction is a powerful force, but it may not have acted alone. The disappearance of Heracleion is now understood by many scientists as a perfect storm, a cascade of environmental disasters that conspired to pull the city under. Picture the Nile Delta not as solid land, but as a massive, multi-layered cake left out in the rain. The base layers are ancient, compacted silt, relatively firm. But the top layers, where the city was built, are newer, softer, and saturated with water. This is the soggy cake. Now, imagine placing a heavy decoration on top, a dense stone city. For centuries it holds, but then several things happen at once. First, the climate was changing. During the period when Heracleion sank, the Mediterranean Sea was experiencing a gradual rise in sea level, a slow, relentless pressure pushing at the city's edges. This meant the water table beneath the city was permanently higher, keeping the foundational sediments perpetually soft and unstable. The city was already sitting in a bowl of wet sponge. Then came the trigger, likely a significant earthquake. The seismic waves would have violently agitated that waterlogged sponge, turning it instantly to slurry in a liquefaction event. But the earthquake could have delivered a second, more direct blow. If the epicenter was offshore in the Mediterranean, the same quake could have generated a tsunami. A wall of water surging into the Abu Qir Bay would have overwhelmed the harbor defenses and flooded the city's lower districts, adding immense hydraulic pressure and further eroding the already compromised ground. There is a third, deeply ironic possibility. The very life source of Egypt, the annual Nile flood, could have turned traitor. In a year of an exceptionally high flood, a colossal volume of fresh water would have poured into the delta's water table. This sudden infusion could have destabilized the delicate balance between sediment and pore water, essentially over-soaking the cake from below until it could no longer bear the weight. It is this combination of factors that paints the most compelling and terrifying picture. Heracleion did not simply sink one day. It was likely subjected to a brutal 1-2 punch, or even a 1-2-3 punch over a relatively short period. A major earthquake triggers liquefaction and perhaps a tsunami. Seasonal floods or continued seismic aftershocks keep the ground in a perpetually unstable, fluid state. All the while, the slowly rising Mediterranean Sea inches higher. The result is not a single collapse, but a progressive, unstoppable subsidence. The grand temple of Amun-Jereb would have tilted on its axis, its colossal statues toppling into the churning mud. Canals became death traps, their stone banks crumbling as seawater rushed in. Houses and warehouses, their foundations liquefied, would have slumped and disappeared beneath the rising tide. The citizens, witnessing their world literally melting away beneath their feet, would have had little choice but to flee with what they could carry, abandoning their homes to the hungry sea. Within a generation, perhaps less, the bustling gateway to Egypt was gone, leaving only a few scattered pillars breaking the surface to mark where a metropolis once stood. This perfect storm theory turns the sinking from a mystery into a tragic inevitability, a warning written in silt and stone about building on the fragile, shifting edges of the world. The silent, sinking streets of Heracleion hold one final, haunting question. What became of the people who called this glittering port home? The geological evidence paints a picture of a terrifying, progressive collapse, but the human story is written in the artifacts they left behind. The stark lack of human remains discovered so far is a powerful clue. In a sudden, tsunami-like catastrophe, we would expect to find skeletons trapped in collapsed buildings or entangled in the sunken ships. Their absence suggests something different, a managed exodus. It implies that as the ground liquefied and the waters rose, the citizens had enough time and enough warning to gather their families and flee. They likely watched their city die by inches, the grand temple tilting like a sinking ship, their homes slowly filling with brackish water. An organized retreat to higher ground, perhaps to the newer, more stable port of Alexandria, seems plausible. Yet, this theory is complicated by the very treasures that make the site so spectacular. Why would people fleeing an impending disaster leave behind solid gold jewelry, delicate bronze statues of their gods, and heirlooms of immense personal and monetary value? These were not bulky items, they were portable wealth. Their presence on the seafloor suggests another, more frantic possibility. Perhaps the final trigger, a major earthquake or a devastating storm surge, struck faster than anyone predicted. In that scenario, the priority becomes life, not property. People would have run for the hills, leaving everything behind in a desperate scramble for survival. The truth likely lies in a painful middle ground. For decades, as subsistence worsened, the wealthiest and most mobile families probably relocated, taking their most precious belongings with them. But for the poor, the elderly, and the stubbornly hopeful, leaving was not so simple. Their entire world was here. Then, one day, the ground shook with unprecedented violence, a final, decisive blow. In that moment of pure panic, the remaining residents fled with only the clothes on their backs, their personal treasures tumbling from shelves and chests as walls cracked and floors buckled. The abandoned gold bracelet and the toppled household gods become relics of that ultimate, terrifying hour. How did they understand what was happening to them? To the ancient Egyptian and Greek mind, such a disaster could only be a divine punishment. The gods of the Nile and the sea were clearly enraged had the pharaoh failed in his duties. Had the priests of Amun-Jereb offended the gods with some unseen impiety, the very earth, the foundation of creation, was turning to liquid beneath the temple of the supreme god. This would have been interpreted not as geology but as theology, a terrifying sign that the cosmic order itself was crumbling. The survivors likely carried that trauma with them, a story of a proud city swallowed by the sea as a warning for generations to come. In the end, Heracleon's greatest mystery is not how it sank, but how its people faced the unthinkable. Their absence speaks of resilience, their abandoned treasures whisper of loss, and the silent stones ask us to consider what we would save if our own world began to dissolve. Gold and stories are only recovered through a battle against the sea itself. Uncovering Heracleion is not a simple matter of diving down and picking up treasures. It is a slow, painstaking, and often treacherous form of high-stakes archaeology, conducted in an environment that fights back at every turn. The first and most constant adversary is the water itself. Abu Qir is not a crystal-clear lagoon. Visibility can drop to mere centimeters, a thick, swirling soup of suspended silt that turns a diver's world into a disorienting, featureless green gloom. Navigating this blind space requires not just skill, but a profound trust in technology and teamwork. Strong, unpredictable currents can sweep through the site, threatening to slam an archaeologist into a sharp-edged stone block or whisk away a vital but fragile artifact before it can be secured. Every movement must be deliberate, every gesture measured, for a single misplaced fin kick can erase centuries of history in a cloud of obscuring mud. And then there is the sediment itself. While it perfectly preserved wood, fabric, and metal for millennia, that same mud is a delicate matrix holding clues in place. An object's position, its depth in the layers, and what lies around it are all part of its story. Excavating here is not like digging a trench on land. It is more like performing microsurgery in zero gravity, using hands and small tools to gently fan away grains of sand, revealing an artifact millimeter by millimeter without disturbing the crucial archaeological context that gives it meaning. To meet these challenges, the team employs a suite of ingenious tools that look more like inventions from a science fiction novel. One of the most critical is the airlift, a simple yet brilliant underwater vacuum cleaner. A long, rigid tube is lowered from a support ship to the seabed. Compressed air is pumped into the bottom of the tube, creating a rising column of bubbles that sucks water and loose sediment up and out, discharging it through a sieve basket on the surface where it can be carefully examined for tiny finds. This allows archaeologists to clear large areas of silt with surgical precision, controlling the suction to avoid damaging fragile items. When they encounter something massive, like a multi-ton statue, brute force is not an option. Instead, they use the principle of buoyancy. Specially designed lifting bags, essentially giant, durable balloons, are carefully positioned and filled with air from a diver's tank. As the bags inflate, they gently cradle the stone giant, neutralizing its immense weight in the water and allowing it to be floated to the surface in a controlled, stress-free ascent. This prevents the kind of sudden shock or impact that could fracture granite that has been underwater for 2,000 years. but perhaps the most transformative technology is one that works with light. Because visibility is so poor, traditional mapping is impossible. The solution is photogrammetry. Divers take thousands of overlapping photographs of a site or an object from every conceivable angle. Powerful computer software then analyzes these images, matching common points to stitch them together into an incredibly detailed, three-dimensional digital model. This virtual map is a game changer. It allows archaeologists to study the layout of a temple wall or the inscription on a stele in perfect clarity on a computer screen, rotating it and taking measurements without ever needing to see it clearly underwater. It creates a permanent, precise record of everything exactly as it was found, a digital twin of the sunken city that can be shared with researchers around the world and preserved long after the originals are raised. The triumph, however, does not end when an artifact breaks the surface. In many ways, the real rescue mission begins on land. A statue that has been saturated in salt water for centuries is in mortal danger the moment it leaves the sea. The salts are embedded deep within the stone's pores. If it dries naturally, those salts will crystallize, expand, and literally blow the statue apart from the inside. To save it, conservators begin a years-long process of desalination. The statue is submerged in a custom-built freshwater tank. The water is changed regularly, sometimes for over a year, slowly drawing the salts out. Scientists constantly test the water's salinity until no more salt emerges. Only then can the gradual, controlled drying begin. This patient, scientific vigilance is what stands between us and dust. It is a silent promise to the past, ensuring that the giants of Heracleion, rescued from a watery grave, will endure for generations to come, their stone stories finally safe to tell. The patient rescue of each artifact is more than conservation. It is the recovery of an entire chapter of human history. For centuries, our understanding of the ancient Mediterranean was like a puzzle with a crucial piece missing. We had the stories of powerful Egyptian pharaohs and the vibrant tales of Greek city-states, but the map of how they connected, economically and politically, was blurry and filled with guesswork. The discovery of Heracleion did not just add a new piece to that puzzle, it forced us to take the entire board apart and reassemble it with a clarity that has rewritten our textbooks. Before its stones were lifted from the mud, historians relied heavily on Greek sources like Herodotus, who wrote about the trading port of Naucratis. This created a narrative where Greek merchants operated in a kind of privileged bubble within Egypt, a concession granted by a distant pharaoh. Heracleion shatters that simplistic view. That black granite decree found on the temple floor is the ultimate primary source. It proves, in the pharaoh's own words, that Egyptian control over Greek trade was absolute, systematic, and financially ruthless. Every Greek ship was forced to stop at this mandatory checkpoint, have its cargo inventoried, and pay a 10% tax directly to the Egyptian state before proceeding a single mile up the Nile. This was not a friendly partnership between equals, it was a strict top-down imposition of economic sovereignty. Heracleion was the customs barrier and the pharaohs held the keys. This redefines the political relationship. It shows Egypt not as a passive recipient of Mediterranean culture, but as an assertive, administrative power that funneled the wealth of an entire sea directly into its own temples and treasuries, long before the rise of Rome or even Alexander the Great. Perhaps even more profound than the tax records is the cultural story told by the city's everyday objects. For a long time, history was taught in neat, separate chapters: Egyptian civilization here, the Greek world there, with Alexander's conquest in the 4th century BCE acting as the moment they finally mixed. Heracleion proves this fusion began centuries earlier, and it was not imposed by conquest but cultivated through daily commerce and coexistence. The city itself is a physical manifesto of this blend. A priest might wear a Greek-style tunic but carry an amulet of the Egyptian god Osiris. A merchant's home might serve wine from Chios in Greek amphorae, while incense burned in an Egyptian-shaped alabaster bowl before a statuette of the goddess Isis crafted with Greek artistic flair. This was not just trade in goods, it was a trade in ideas, styles, and beliefs. The very statues of the Ptolemaic king and queen, with their hybrid Egyptian-Greek features, are stone proof that this blending was official policy, a deliberate strategy to rule effectively. Heracleion reveals a vibrant, organic multicultural society thriving at the mouth of the Nile, a place where identity was layered and fluid long before the term globalization was ever conceived. It challenges the outdated notion of ancient cultures as isolated, pure entities, showing instead a world of constant, dynamic exchange. So what does this sunken city leave us? Heracleion is far more than an archaeological treasure trove. It is a corrective lens. For millennia, it was a ghost in the historical record, a legend that allowed for misinterpretation. By returning to the map, it has restored a critical missing chapter, one that details the precise mechanics of power, profit, and cultural interplay in the ancient world. It shifts our perspective from the inland capitals and island city-states to the vital, volatile coastlines where civilizations truly met. The city's fate is also a timeless warning, a reminder that the most magnificent human achievements are built upon foundations we often take for granted, foundations that can, quite literally, turn to liquid. But its legacy is ultimately one of connection. In its silent canals, we hear the echoes of 1,000 negotiations. In its blended jewelry, we see the personal choices of a people creating a new, shared identity from two great traditions. Heracleion forces us to rewrite history not with speculation, but with stone, gold, and clay pulled from the sea, finally giving voice to a gateway that was silent for over 1,200 years. Yet for all the answers pulled from the silt, the silent city still guards profound secrets. The Grand Temple, the bustling harbor, and the sunken fleet are only parts of the map. Archaeologists now face the tantalizing gaps, the missing pieces that could transform our understanding once more. One of the most pressing questions is one of power. Where is the main palace? Every major administrative center in the ancient world had a seat of secular governance, a residence for the official who oversaw the tax collection and daily operations. In Heracleion, the Temple of Amun-Jereb clearly held immense religious and economic authority, but the man who executed the pharaoh's laws must have lived somewhere. Was his palace a separate complex, perhaps on an island that has yet to be fully surveyed? Finding its remains could reveal archives of day-to-day governance, clay tablets or inscribed stones detailing disputes, shipments, and decrees that would add a human voice to the bureaucratic machinery we already understand. An even more electrifying possibility lies in the potential for written words on papyrus. The climate of the Nile Delta, especially when submerged, can sometimes create anaerobic conditions, environments without oxygen that can preserve organic materials like wood, fabric, and remarkably, papyrus scrolls. While no such library has been found yet, the hope persists. Could there be a sealed cellar or a sunken repository containing the city's records? A single, well-preserved scroll could be a historical lightning bolt. It might hold a ship's manifest listing exotic cargo from distant lands, a priest's diary describing the final, terrifying days of the city, or even a lost literary work from the ancient world. The discovery of any papyrus would be a miracle of preservation, offering a direct line to the thoughts and transactions of Heracleion's people in their own hand. Then there is the precise chronology of the catastrophe. We understand the mechanisms of liquefaction and subsidence, but the human timeline remains blurred. Did the final, catastrophic earthquake strike at night when the harbor was quiet or in the middle of a busy trading day? Did the city sink in a matter of hours, or did it undergo a series of collapses over several years, with people returning to salvage what they could from increasingly flooded ruins? Dendrochronology, the study of tree rings in the recovered ship timbers, might one day provide an exact year for their final voyage. More precise core samples from the seabed could reveal distinct layers of tsunami sand, liquefaction slurry, and gradual silt, allowing scientists to sequence the disaster like chapters in a geological book. Pinpointing this timeline would tell us not just how the city fell, but at what speed its people had to flee. This is why the story of Heracleion is far from closed. Each summer, when the Mediterranean weather calms, archaeologists return to Abu Qir Bay. Their dives are now guided by new questions as much as by old maps. They use ever more sophisticated sub-bottom profilers to peer deeper into the sediment, searching for the outlines of that missing palace or the telltale void of a buried structure. They excavate new sectors of the residential districts, hoping to find a sealed room or a collapsed archive. Every recovered object, even a broken piece of pottery, is a data point that refines the narrative. The city is a puzzle still being assembled, and every expedition holds the potential for a revelation that could, once again, rewrite a paragraph in our history books. The legacy of Heracleion is not just in the gold and granite already in museums, but in the mysteries still waiting in the dark water, reminding us that history is not a static record, but a story we are still learning how to read. The mysteries still waiting in the dark water have ignited imaginations far beyond the world of archaeology. Heracleion has transcended its status as a dig site to become a modern legend, a real-life Atlantis that proves some of the greatest stories are true. Its dramatic narrative of a wealthy port swallowed by the sea has captured the global imagination, featuring in high-profile documentaries from the BBC and National Geographic that bring its underwater grandeur into living rooms worldwide. The city fills the pages of best-selling historical fiction and non-fiction books, where authors weave tales around its cosmopolitan streets and catastrophic end. It has even surfaced in the realm of video games, providing a stunning, explorable backdrop for digital adventurers, a testament to its powerful hold on our collective sense of wonder. This widespread fascination culminated in a landmark event, the international exhibition titled Sunken Cities, Egypt's Lost Worlds. Beginning in 2016 and touring major institutions like the British Museum in London and the St. Louis Art Museum, the exhibition was a sensation. For the first time, the public could stand face to face with the colossal statue of the god Hapi, gaze upon the delicate gold bracelet of Isis, and examine the black granite decree that solved a 2,000-year-old mystery. Visitors walked through reconstructed underwater scenes, surrounded by the very artifacts that had lain hidden beneath the Mediterranean, creating an emotional and direct connection to this lost world. The lines that formed outside those museums were not just for ancient art, they were for a story, a chance to witness myth made tangible. Heracleion has become more than a city, it is a powerful symbol. It represents every whispered legend of a lost civilization, the enduring human fascination with grandeur and sudden demise. Its rediscovery validates that instinct, proving that sometimes the most fantastical stories have a core of truth waiting to be uncovered. For artists, writers, and dreamers, the city offers the ultimate template, a historical reality that rivals any fiction. A place where the past is not gone but merely submerged, holding its breath until we are ready to listen. The fate of a sunken city is not sealed once it is found. The very act of rediscovery introduces a new and critical challenge, the race to preserve it. Heracleion now faces threats more immediate than the slow creep of silt. Natural erosion, even underwater, continues its work. Currents subtly reshape the seabed, exposing once buried timbers to oxygen and accelerating their decay. The chemistry of the seawater itself interacts with metals and stone, a corrosive process that never truly stops. But perhaps the most urgent danger is not from nature but from people. The location of the site is no longer a secret, and the treasures it holds are priceless. The threat of looting by unauthorized divers is a constant, grim shadow over the work of archaeologists. A single stolen artifact is not just a loss of an object, it is the erasure of a piece of the story, ripped from the context that gives it meaning. This reality forces a profound ethical question upon us. What do we owe this lost city? Should we raise every statue, recover every gold coin, and bring them all to the safety of climate-controlled museums for public display and scholarly study? Or is there a greater value in leaving the city largely where it lies, respecting it as a complete, submerged landscape, an underwater museum where the artifacts remain in their original setting? There are compelling arguments for both paths. Raising artifacts saves them from physical degradation and looting, allowing millions to witness them firsthand. Yet, removing them also removes them from the storyboard of the seafloor, dismantling the very relationships between objects that tell us how the city functioned. It is a tension between preservation and context, between sharing the wonder and protecting the integrity of the site itself. In response to this dilemma, a pioneering compromise is taking shape, led by the European Institute for Underwater Archaeology. Their approach is one of minimal physical disturbance and maximum digital capture. Using advanced photogrammetry and three-dimensional laser scanning, teams are creating hyper-detailed virtual models of the entire sunken landscape. Every statue, every amphora, every stone block is photographed from thousands of angles. Powerful software then stitches these images together to build a perfect, navigable digital twin of Heracleion. This virtual city is a revolution in preservation. Researchers anywhere in the world can now explore the site without ever getting wet, taking precise measurements, and studying the placement of objects in relation to each other with a clarity impossible in the murky bay. It creates an immortal record, a backup of the city that will survive even if the original continues to slowly fade. For the public, it opens the door to immersive experiences, allowing anyone to take a virtual dive through the sunken temples from their own home. This digital guardianship offers a powerful middle path. It reduces the need for intrusive recovery of artifacts solely for study, allowing many to remain in situ, holding their place in the silent narrative of the seafloor. The goal is no longer simply to empty the site, but to understand it so completely that its physical form can be entrusted to the deep, its story secured in the cloud. The future of Heracleion may not be in glass museum cases alone, but in the luminous space where cutting-edge technology meets the ancient mud, ensuring that even if the stones finally crumble, the city will never be lost again. The sun is high over the mouth of the Nile, and the air on the main canal shimmers with heat and activity. Let your mind walk with us down the stone-paved embankment of Heracleion in its prime. To your left, the dark, reflective water of the canal is choked with motion. A deep-keeled Greek merchant ship, its sails still loosely furled, is tied fast to a massive stone quay. Burly dockworkers, their backs glistening, are hauling two-handled amphorae from its hold, passing them in a rhythmic chain up to the waiting scribes. The air carries a cacophony of sound, the creak of ropes, the shouted orders in Greek, the answering calls in Egyptian, and the melodic lilt of a Phoenician trader bargaining nearby. This is not a silent ruin, but a deafening, vibrant crossroads of the world. Ahead, the grand processional way leads toward the heart of the city, flanked by sentinels of red granite. The colossal statues of a pharaoh and a queen stand 5 times the height of a person, their painted eyes gazing serenely over the bustling crowd. Their stone skin, once brightly colored, gleams in the sunlight, a dazzling display of power meant to awe every visitor. Beneath their feet, the ground vibrates with the slow, deliberate tread of a sacred procession. Priests in white linen robes carry a gilded bark holding the statue of the god Amun-Jereb, its path strewn with flower petals. The sweet, heavy scent of Kaiphai incense, a complex blend of myrrh and honey, drifts from the temple complex, cutting through the salt and fish smell of the harbor. Turn a corner and the commercial frenzy of the main canal gives way to the dense, colorful chaos of a marketplace. canopies of striped cloth provide shade for countless stalls. Here, a merchant from Cyprus displays gleaming copper ingots. There, an Egyptian artisan sells delicate faience amulets of the god Bes, their blue glaze brilliant. Your ears pick up the clink of metal on metal, not from weapons but from commerce. A Greek sailor fingering a worn Athenian coin points to a stack of fine papyrus scrolls. A local woman bargains for a bolt of vibrant purple cloth, a color so expensive it speaks of royalty, imported from the workshops of Tyre. The very dust underfoot is a mixture of local earth and powdered spices from distant Arabia. This sensory overload is the true genius of Heracleion. It was a city built for efficiency and spectacle. The wide canals were not just for ceremony, they were liquid highways, allowing goods to move directly from the deep water harbor to warehouses and workshops without ever touching a cart. The imposing statues were not mere art, they were the first line of administrative authority, a stone reminder of the pharaoh's tax that awaited every transaction. The mingled smells of incense and sweat, of foreign perfumes and baking bread, tell the story of a society in constant creative friction. You could hear a prayer to the Egyptian god Osiris uttered with a Greek accent, and see an Egyptian scribe recording a cargo manifest using both hieroglyphic and Greek script. For a moment, standing in this imagined space, the archaeological fragments fuse into a living whole. The gold bracelet is on a merchant's wife, hurrying to the temple with an offering. The stone anchor, now resting on the seabed, is being hauled aboard a ship preparing to depart. This was the daily symphony of Heracleion, a harmony of cultures played on the unstable ground at the edge of the sea, a vibrant proof that some worlds are not truly lost, only waiting for us to listen. But the story of this sunken coast does not end at Heracleion's harbor walls. Just a few kilometers to the east, the same team's sonar maps revealed another ghostly outline beneath the bay, the lost city of Canopus. If Heracleion was the stern customs officer and banker of the Nile Delta, then Canopus was its vibrant, indulgent younger sibling, a city with a reputation that echoed through the ancient world. While Heracleion was defined by taxes and temples to the state god Ammon, Canopus was celebrated as a city of pleasure and healing, a destination for those seeking both earthly delights and divine cures. Ancient writers spoke of its luxurious atmosphere, its grand processions, and its famed temple of the god Serapis, a deity specifically associated with healing and the afterlife. This was not just another port, it was a spiritual resort drawing pilgrims and pleasure seekers from across the Mediterranean to its unique shores. The underwater discoveries have given stunning physical form to these ancient rumors. The layout of Canopus is strikingly different from its neighbor. Archaeologists have mapped a long, straight canal, a processional waterway nearly 100 meters wide that formed the city's central artery. This was no utilitarian channel for moving cargo, this was a stage for spectacle. Lining this grand canal were statues and small chapels, creating a theatrical route for the sacred barges of the gods during lavish public festivals. The most telling finds, however, come from the city's northern district. Here, divers uncovered a sprawling complex of buildings centered around a large, circular freshwater pool, fed by a network of brick-lined channels and surrounded by the foundations of numerous rooms. This was a monumental bath complex, a place of social gathering, hygiene, and ritual purification. For pilgrims arriving after a long voyage, cleansing themselves in these waters would have been the first sacred act before approaching the temples. The presence of such an elaborate and public bathhouse reinforces Canopus's identity as a city dedicated to wellness and renewal, both of the body and the spirit. This focus on healing points directly to the city's most famous and mysterious institution, the Great Temple of Serapis. Ancient sources describe it not only as a place of worship, but as an oracle site where the god would communicate answers to the desperate and the devout. People would travel great distances, often bringing offerings or sleeping within the temple precinct in hopes of receiving a curative dream or a divine message. While the main structure of this legendary temple is yet to be fully excavated, the artifacts found in its vicinity speak volumes. Dozens of bronze votive offerings, many in the shape of healed body parts like ears, eyes, and limbs, have been recovered from the silt. These were left by grateful pilgrims who believed the god had cured them. Even more poignant are the small, carved stone plaques depicting individuals in prayer, their inscriptions begging Serapis for health or giving thanks for it. Each one is a fossilized moment of human hope and suffering, a direct line to the personal crises that brought people to this watery shore. Studying Canopus and Heracleion together is like reading two complementary chapters of the same epic story. They reveal a coastline of remarkable specialization and sophistication. Heracleion controlled the hard power of commerce and state religion, the mandatory first stop that fueled Egypt's economy. Canopus, just a short sail away, offered the soft power of culture, healing, and spiritual solace, a voluntary destination that fed the soul. One city was about obligation and control, the other about desire and redemption. This duality paints a far richer picture of life in the late Egyptian world. A Greek merchant, after paying his taxes at Heracleion, could easily sail on to Canopus to seek a cure for an ailment at the Temple of Serapis, or simply to enjoy its famed festivities. The two cities functioned as a paired destination, catering to the full spectrum of human need, from the material to the metaphysical. Their simultaneous discovery allows archaeologists to see the ancient coastline not as a series of isolated dots, but as a connected cultural landscape, a deliberate network of ports, each serving a distinct purpose in the social and economic ecosystem. The sinking of this dual coastline was therefore a double catastrophe, erasing not just a customs house but an entire sanctuary, silencing both the clatter of scales and the whispered prayers of pilgrims in one terrible, subsiding act. The processional canals of Canopus carried more than healing pilgrims. They flowed with a currency of faith that was measured in land and grain. While divers were mapping the bath complexes, another inscribed giant was being carefully raised from the temple district of Heracleion, a second black granite stele that spoke not of taxes but of divine female power. This slab is known as the stele of the god's wife, and its words introduce us to one of the most influential figures in ancient Egypt, a priestess who held the formidable title, God's Wife of Ammon. This was no ordinary religious role. For centuries, this title was reserved for a royal woman, often the daughter or sister of the ruling pharaoh. She was considered the earthly spouse of the supreme god Ammon, a living bridge between the divine and the royal family. Her position granted her immense religious authority, control over vast temple estates, and a political influence that could shape the succession of the throne itself. The stele found in Heracleion records a specific, powerful act. It details a generous donation of land, its harvests and revenues, to be given in perpetuity to the temple of Ammon-Jereb in Heracleion, enacted by the current god's wife. Think of this not just as a religious gift, but as a strategic investment. The fertile fields of the Nile Delta were the ultimate source of wealth, the engine that fed cities and funded armies. By transferring control of this land to the temple, the god's wife was doing several things at once. She was securing a permanent income stream for the temple priests, ensuring they had the resources to maintain the grand rituals and the physical structure. She was also weaving the temple at Heracleion more tightly into the national religious fabric, directly linking its fate to the royal house in the capital. This was a statement of endorsement from the highest spiritual office in the land, declaring that this port temple was a worthy and crucial recipient of the kingdom's bounty. The stele's location is what makes this discovery so profound. It was not found in the ancient Egyptian capital of Thebes, where the cult of Ammon was centered, but here at the watery edge of the Mediterranean. This tells us that the authority of the god's wife of Ammon extended across the entire realm, from the heart of the Nile to its mouth. Heracleion's temple was not some remote outpost, it was a fully integrated node in a nationwide network of religious and economic power. The land donation guaranteed that a portion of Egypt's agricultural wealth, the very lifeblood of the civilization, was being funneled directly to this gateway city. It provided the temple with financial independence and stability beyond just the customs taxes on foreign trade. This stele, therefore, solves another layer of the mystery about the city's grandeur. It explains how a temple on the coast could afford such colossal statues and lavish ceremonies. Its wealth came not only from taxing Greek ships, but from the rich, black soil of Egypt itself, managed by a priestess who answered only to the god and the pharaoh. Together, the decree of size and the stele of the god's wife bookend the city's purpose. One stone proves Heracleion's absolute control over incoming foreign wealth. The other proves its deep entitlement to the internal wealth of Egypt. The city stood at the convergence point of two rivers of treasure, one of silver from across the sea and one of grain from the Nile Valley, both flowing under the watchful eyes of Ammon-Jereb. The granite steles spoke of taxes and land grants, but the mud beneath them holds a different kind of record, one written in layers of silt and salt. Heracleion's fate was a complex geological equation, a combination of unstable ground, seismic shocks, and a creeping rise in sea level. This was not a freak, one-time event, but a cascade of environmental pressures that ultimately overwhelmed the city's foundations. The people of Heracleion built their gateway to the world on a delta, a landscape of profound fertility and profound fragility. They thrived for centuries, but they were living on borrowed time, on ground that could turn from solid to liquid without warning. In that sobering reality, the sunken city stops being merely a historical curiosity and becomes something far more urgent, a mirror held up to our own world. We are not so different from them. Today, great coastal cities from Venice to Miami to Shanghai are engaged in a constant, expensive battle against the sea. Their foundations are not liquefying from earthquakes, but they are being undermined by a slower, more global force, the steady rise in ocean levels driven by our changing climate. The water is coming for them too, not in a single catastrophic day, but in a relentless creep of higher tides, more frequent flooding, and increasingly violent storm surges that test the limits of human engineering. Venice employs massive, controversial floodgates to hold back the Adriatic. Miami spends billions on pumps and raised roads, even as saltwater infiltrates its freshwater aquifers. These are modern versions of the same desperate struggle, the attempt to hold a line against a rising natural force. Heracleion's story strips away the illusion of permanence. It shows us that a city can be at the peak of its wealth and power, a vital hub for global trade, and still be fundamentally vulnerable. Its leaders likely saw the cracks appearing in the temple walls, watched the canals flood with unusual frequency, and felt the ground tremble. They may have made repairs, raised seawalls, or performed extra rituals to appease the gods, but they did not and could not comprehend the full scale of the planetary processes at work. They were adapting to symptoms, not addressing the root cause, because the root cause was the very nature of their world. Our advantage and our profound responsibility is that we do understand the mechanisms. We have the science to measure the melting ice sheets, to model the rising seas, and to forecast the intensifying storms. Heracleion's tragedy was one of geological inevitability mixed with bad luck. Our potential tragedy would be one of foreseen consequences met with inaction. The sunken city thus becomes a powerful metaphor for resilience and humility. It is a testament to human ingenuity that we can recover its story from the deep and learn its lessons, but it is also a stark reminder of our place within a dynamic, often unforgiving natural system. The stones of Heracleion ask us a difficult question as we look at our own glittering coastlines. Are we building monuments or are we building legacies? Are we creating cities that can adapt and endure, or are we merely constructing the next generation of beautiful, vulnerable ruins waiting for the water to claim its due? The journey of Heracleion is a story of rediscovery, a legend pulled from the sea and returned to the light of history. We began with a whisper in ancient texts, a phantom port dismissed as myth. We end with a city resurrected from the silt, its story told in stone and gold. The colossal statues of the god Hapi and the Ptolemaic rulers, once symbols of a city's divine and earthly power, now stand in museums as silent witnesses to its grandeur. The black granite stele, resting for millennia on the temple floor, provided the definitive proof, solving the ancient riddle of Thonis and Heracleion with a single, bureaucratic decree. The golden treasures, from the delicate bracelet of Isis to the personal offerings in the sacred canal, gave us a glimpse into the private hopes and daily lives of its citizens. And the tragic sinking, a perfect storm of liquefaction, seismic shocks, and rising seas, revealed the profound vulnerability of even the greatest human achievements to the forces of nature. Heracleion's true legacy, however, is not just in these individual treasures. It is as a monumental bridge. For centuries, it was the physical point where two great civilizations, Egypt and Greece, met and melded. It was a customs house and a cultural crossroads where taxes were paid in silver and identities were woven from two distinct threads. Its rediscovery forced us to redraw the map of the ancient world, proving that deep cultural exchange and strict economic control existed side by side long before the history books said they did. It is a powerful reminder that the ground beneath our feet is never as solid as it seems, and that the natural world holds the final say over our most ambitious creations. And yet, in a profound twist of fate, the same sea that swallowed Heracleion also became its greatest protector. The water that hid it for over 1,200 years sealed it in a unique anaerobic tomb, preserving wood, fabric, and delicate gold far better than any desert tomb or buried ruin ever could. The sea did not just destroy the city, it gifted us a frozen moment in time, a complete snapshot of a living, breathing port at the peak of its power. We are left not with scattered ruins, but with an entire world in suspension, a conversation between civilizations that the silt faithfully recorded and the modern world has only just begun to hear. So what piece of this story resonates most with you? Was it the decisive weight of the granite stele, the personal touch of a golden bracelet lost in panic, or the eerie silence of ships that sank at their moorings? Let us know which artifact or mystery of Heracleion captured your imagination in the comments below. If you want to join more explorations into the world's greatest historical puzzles, be sure to subscribe. There are always more stories waiting beneath the surface.